Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." I'm Randy Wheeler, and that's the foundation of Wheeler Legacy Videos. We believe there's value in exploring who you are, the life you're living, and the legacy you're developing. Tim and Susie Riordan have known each other since high school. We joined them in 2018 in Tim's man cave, a large pole barn overlooking the house where Susie and Tim reared their 4 children, Lori, Jim, Karen, and Matthew. They were all there for the legacy interview. Sometimes gentle and occasionally not so gentle April showers provided a soothing backdrop as Tim and Susie responded to the opening question, "What are your earliest memories?"
First thing I remember in life, I guess, is my mother carrying me up the steps, and there was a window open, and she bumped her head. And when she bumped her head, she cried. And I remember that, really, oh boy, this is going to be good, isn't it?
Moms aren't allowed to cry, right?
Right.
Uh-huh.
I can't believe I'm just starting on the first question and getting choked up. Oh my
Out of
goodness.
all things. Yeah.
Uh,
And how did you feel about that when that happened?
well, I was amazed because I didn't, it surprised me. I didn't think that she would, I didn't think moms cried. I thought that was for me to do. And I guess it is. Oh boy! But then we lived next door to her mother and her 2 sisters that never married. So she had a babysitter all the time, and I remember them carrying me around. And of course they took care of my sisters too, Marianne and Linda. They were both older than me, so that's actually my very first memory. I don't remember my grandfathers. They both, I remember seeing my grandfather Barthel. I don't remember, I never met my grandfather Riordan, but so I didn't know them. And my grandmother Riordan, she had 15 children, so she was pretty busy all the time, even then when I was a little kid. So, but I don't want to take too much time.
And Susie, how about you? What are some of your first memories as a young one?
Well, I lived on a little farm, and I had 2 brothers and a sister, and my sister was like 18 years older than me, and I was the baby, and it was a working farm, and I just worked at not working. And we had strawberries, raspberries, corn, everything, and I had very loving mother and dad and nice family, and but they did work very hard, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Describe your mom and dad for me.
Oh, my dad was real stern, and what he said, you did, and I don't ever remember getting a spanking from him, but I did mother. I had like a smart mouth, and I love my mother so much. I love Dad too, but my mother and I was very close.
Tim, what do you remember of your folks?
Okay, well, of course, that's the first thing I remember of Mom carrying me up the steps. I don't have a good memory of Dad at that time because he worked on the railroad, and he lived in Madisonville in a camp car. Back then, if you lived away from your home, the railroad, L&N, provided you a place to live, and it was just a box car that had a door cut in it, and that was your home. So, and Mom wouldn't go down there and stay with him, but she liked where she was because she had babysitters, is what it was. I know that. And then one day he came to Evansville and he told her he'd found a house to live in. It was on the Catholic school property in Earlington, and he had it rented, and she needed to come and stay with him. First week she didn't. He called her and told her, you got to come now or never. And she packed up and came, and then we lived 12 years in that house before we built a new house. But yeah, Dad was kind of a stern fellow. He didn't show his emotions too much, so I guess I got that from my mother. But Mom was a sweet girl, wonderful woman, and yeah, she had she she loved me dearly,
Yeah.
and my sisters too.
What were some of the things that you recall learning from your mom and dad? Some life lessons, perhaps?
Well, with Dad, he he taught me that there wasn't anything I couldn't achieve. I mean, one example was I had a motorcycle. This would have been in my teens. I was probably 13, and the back sprocket was wore out. And I found another sprocket, but it had rivets. The old one had rivets in it. And I remember him saying, I said, well, I can't do that. I can't change that out. And he said, well, somebody else could do it. If somebody else can do it, you can do it. And I kind of lived by that from all my life, of thinking that, if somebody else can do something, there's no reason in the world I can't do it. And that was probably really a good lesson to learn from him. And I've kind of lived by that.
I remember telling my daughters a number of times that if somebody else can invent it, I can at least fix it.
Yes, very true. That's true.
Yeah. And Susie, how about some of the life lessons that you picked up from your mom and dad?
Well, they always told us to do right. I mean, to this day, I still think about things that I do and what my mom and dad would think. I thought about that, I think, all my life, and I think that's why I've had a really good life. I've done really well, just because I was raised right, and I think of them all the time.
Hard workers, very hard workers.
Oh,
well, that's not me though. I'm not a hard worker.
You are too.
Please not guilty of that charge, huh? How about your grandparents?
I didn't know my grandparents very well. Mother's parents. The only thing I remember is when they would come out to visit, Grandpa would give us quarters, and that's about all I could remember from them. And not a lot of memories, and I never knew my dad's parents. So.
Can I tell a story about her dad?
No.
They butchered their own hogs and cattle, and I was a city boy basically. So when I got involved with the family, they liked to make fun of city boys. So we butchered hogs once. I helped them. We trimmed the fat and all that. That wasn't a problem. But Oscar, her dad, he always made the blood sausage. I don't know if you know anything about blood sausage, but they grind all the head meat and all the tongue, and what else is in there? Well, you probably don't even know. But
no.
there was a big bucket of of ground up meat, and they saved the blood when they killed the hog, and I had to stir the blood to keep it from clotting. Of course, I'm over there stirring the blood, and they're all kind of watching me out of the corner of their eyes, expecting that I'll get sick or something. And then I had to carry the blood down over to Oscar, and then he would pour it in, and then he would mix it up with his hands. Had blood all over him, but I was set up for that deal, and I came through okay though. But that was kind of
okay. What were some of the lessons that your mom and dad taught you?
Lessons? Well, I'll tell you one lesson that I probably shouldn't even tell. But when I was, we used to ride the bus to Madisonville, from Irvington to Madisonville, 4 miles, and being my buddies, I'm thinking I was 12, 13, to see the movies on Saturday. We didn't have TV. And one of the boys decided that we need to shoplift. And we were going to get flashlights. So he went in one store and stole a flashlight. I went in another store and stole 2 batteries. It's AAA, or not AAA, it didn't have them, the D's. That was before. And then the other boy did something else. We all did, and then we met and we had a flashlight. And, that was my first time to steal. Well, I think it was the only time in my life I've ever stolen anything. And anyway, I got home, and Mom cornered me, and she said, this lady said that she saw you three boys, and she mentioned it by name, and thought you might be doing something wrong, maybe taking something that wasn't yours. And of course, I kind of panicked. I said, "Oh no!" She didn't even ask me if I did it. She said, "I told that woman that my boy wouldn't do anything like that," and she turned around and walked off. And
Apparently, her lesson got through.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Without her having to beat you on the head or anything.
Right.
Okay. Susie, how about you? Some of the lessons you learned from your folks?
Well, I think the only thing I can think of is just to do right, be honest, treat people right, and that's really all I can just recall. I mean, Mom and Dad worked a lot. Dad worked at Me Johnson's, and Mother, she worked at several restaurants as a cook, and so they weren't home a lot. And so, but we knew that we had to behave at home, and we did fight a lot, and but just to do right.
Yeah. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Prairie Heights grade school, and then Wrights high school, and
Tell us about your education.
I did not like to study much. I was in for the fun, and I made okay grades, but not super. But I didn't hate school, but I did enjoy just being with friends and doing fun stuff. And now I wished I would have paid a little bit more attention.
Your favorite class was recess?
Probably my favorite class was typing. I love to type.
Yeah. Did that serve you all through life?
Not really. I was a stay-at-home mother, so I really didn't work outside the house. I was a beautician, and I did do that a short time. But with him being on the railroad, I stayed home and watched the kids.
Well, I think that's why we get along so well, is our study habits were probably very similar. I didn't like school so much. I was more about fun. I liked playing. I liked that was what it was. I loved my friends. We had great friendships. I say that, but math. My favorite subjects were math and geometry. And I remember one time we were in geometry. We were just moving into that particular book, and we had a test, and I got 100 on it. And I remember the Ursuline nuns were our teachers. They called me aside and asked me some questions, and then I heard a couple of them. They kind of got together and confirmed, talked to one another. What they did, they thought I was cheating because I made 100% on the geometry quiz, and even the brain, had one guy that knew it all the time. He didn't do that good. So that's one of the classes that was really outstanding, and I've always enjoyed things like that. So.
Somewhere along the line, you two crossed paths. You met each other. Since you're on mic right now, let's have your memories of it.
Well, I can still see the first time I saw her. Yeah, it was going in the Parkway restaurant. I was parked out front. She walked in, and I guess I just walked out, and she just pranced in there. Nice looking young lady. Well, she was 17 or 18. I guess she might have been 18 then. Anyway, I said hi, and she just kind of stuck her nose up, and I think you did say hi, didn't you? Yeah. But then my best friend was a busboy at the restaurant. And I had a girlfriend. So he asked Susie for a date, and we double dated, me and my girlfriend and my best friend and Susie. So we actually first talked together on a double date. She was with another guy. And that was a good time. I know I took my girlfriend home and she was upset with me because we went to see a movie. The way, well, I don't remember. It was a Jack Lemmon movie, Days of Wine and Roses. That was our first movie. And my girlfriend was mad at me because she said I talked more in the movie to Susie than I did her. And we broke up shortly after that, and then Susie and I started dating, and it was kind of love at first sight. So.
I was always kind of leery of people, and so I didn't really speak to strangers a lot. I didn't know him. I did say hi to him, I think, but I remember the first time he called me for a date. I was working at a beauty shop, and he said, "This is Tim Riordan." I knew exactly who it was. I said, "Who?" And I just act like I didn't know him, but I did. And I did go on the date. And when I came home, Mom was in bed, and I went in and woke Mother up, and I said, I really like this boy. I really like him. And so we started going together, and it went well.
So at some point, one of you popped the question.
On Wrights Hill.
All right. Describe that scene when you proposed.
Got the ring out of the glove compartment. I showed her, and I remember what she said was, "Well, I can't wear this." I think she said, "Dad would kill me." Her dad didn't. Well, there was a conflict there. He, from an old German family, they didn't. How do I say it? They weren't really fond of Catholics, and I was a Catholic faith, and so he was concerned about her marrying a Catholic. So it was a long time. It wasn't a long time. I said, "Well, if you're not going to wear it, just give it back to him." And so she did wear it and went home, and I think told her dad, I wasn't with you when you told your dad, I don't think, but he didn't like it, but it went fine. And at our wedding, she didn't even know on our wedding day if he was going to show up, because the wedding was at St. Agnes, and we just didn't know. But he showed up, walked her down the aisle, and the more we socialized with him, he even made the statement. He said, "That's no different than ours." But it was just the prejudice that for no reason, and we were great friends, until the day he died. Yeah. So it turned out well, real well.
Susie, do you remember that moment of proposal there?
I do. I wasn't ready to get married. It was a shock, and I loved him, but I just thought it was a little bit soon. But it all worked out, and went on.
Now, we married nine months after that.
Describe the wedding. Where was it, and who was there? And
it was at St. Agnes, and my sister-in-law was my maid of honor, and it wasn't a real large wedding, but we threw it together. I don't remember a whole lot about my wedding, but we had a reception at Cokies, and it was just punch and cake. And then my parents did have a dinner for the wedding party at their basement, which, the priest was even allowed to go down in Mom and Dad's basement, which was a big step for that, for them to. They came a long way, because they was very against me doing that. But they gave a lot, came a long way, and accepted Tim very well.
Mm-hmm. You remember having to navigate those waters early when the proposal came and you decided that you were going to go along with that, and you had to take it home to your parents? Kind of challenging?
Mm-hmm. Actually, my brother found out that I was engaged, and he could not wait to tell Mom and Dad. So he told Mom and Dad, and it was not good. They wasn't happy at all. But I just kept telling myself, I just cannot wait to get down the aisle. I just want to get down that aisle, and I was very certain that I would marry him, and I mean, all my relatives was against it too. I mean, the whole family was really against the Catholic, me marrying a Catholic. My sister was very against it, but I did what I wanted to do, and I would do it again.
Love and marriage, long comes baby carriage.
Yes.
Describe that whole.
Well, I couldn't wait to be a mother, and but I didn't realize what a big job it was, and he was gone all the time, and really I wasn't prepared, and I was just like 19, so I just was not prepared to be a mother, but I grew up real fast, and I learned how to be a mother.
Tim, were you ready to be a daddy at that point? Or how
I was. We married. Susie was 18. I was 19. Had our child. She was 19. I was 20. Our first child, and then that was Lori. 22 months later, Karen, and then 5 years after that, Jim, and then 10 years after that, Matt. So our children spanned 16 years. So we've always had a family. I mean, we've always had children. It's kind of, it just was a great experience for me. I guess I get that from my grandparents on the Riordan side. They had so many children, and it was something I thought that we were supposed to do.
Lori, our first, she was very timid, very soft. She was really a very good child. And then Karen came along, and she wasn't quite as soft, but she was still just kind of Dutchy talking. I think she may have been my father's favorite. If we needed anything heavy done, we would have Karen drag it around. She was more spiteful. She wasn't afraid to do what she wasn't supposed to do. Where Lori, she was. And then we had Jim. Jim went 90 miles an hour. He was very hyper. Still is. And but it was just he was Tim's buddy. He really liked hanging out with his dad a lot, and then Matt came very late in life, and he was very laid back child, and just really anything was okay with Matt. Just he just very laid back, but it was just wonderful raising the kids. Just there was a lot of I don't know, action, lots of action, and Tim wasn't home a lot, so I was really the beast, and I kept track of the kids, and I knew where they were at all times. I knew where they were at all times, and they would say, I can't wait till Dad gets home, and I'm going to tell Dad what you did, what you said. And as soon as Tim would come through the door, they would, you won't believe what she did now. And Tim said, did you do that? I said, yes, I did. And I did, I was very strict with children, but I give ourselves credit for raising 4 good kids.
Mhm. Now, I was watching your daughters here. You didn't know where they were.
You just thought.
You thought you knew where they were, but I saw them. No,
I tried.
And some Thanksgiving, they're going to tell you where they really were. You'll be surprised.
Maybe I don't even want to know.
Hey, Tim, how was it for you in this process of providing leadership and guidance for 4 kiddos?
Well, like she said, I was gone quite a bit. I was 18 when I was working for the railroad before we married, so she should have known better than to marry me. But just to let you know how much I worked, after our honeymoon, I came back and reported to work the night of our honeymoon on a Sunday night. Monday morning, I left for 5 days on a work train. Didn't see her for 5 days. This is right after our honeymoon. Came home, was home 8 hours, and went back out to Nashville and back. Was home another 8 hours, and that was Monday morning again. Worked another 5 days on a work train. So the first 2 weeks of our marriage, I was only home 16 hours. I mean that's the way they worked back then. We just worked all the time, and even on Christmas, the first 7 years with the railroad, I worked every Christmas, which is really bad. You know, we would have to arrange Christmas at a different time quite often. You know, the railroad, they would be real busy on Christmas Day, but then the day after Christmas, you'd be off, so had to work around things like that. So it wasn't railroad was really it was a good place to make a living, but it was you had to work really hard to make a life with it. And so that's why, being gone so much, when I came home, if there was some discipline being done, I kind of shied away from it because I didn't want them to be scared for me to come home. I didn't see them that much. But we made up for it. You know, having weekdays off quite often, we really got into camping. That was one of my favorite activities. We sometimes do camping trips all over locally, Harmony, Spring Mill, Lincoln, and those were some of my great memories of having the kids camping and enjoying nature, being out. And of course then, as that was with the girls mostly, then Jim was there. We camped with Jim too. It seems like by the time Matt got here, we didn't do as much camping. So things just change. And then the girls got married and left us, and then we started. My relationship with the boys grew through the scouting experience. We all became involved in scouting, and still are today.
So you did have an opportunity then through scouting, and also some nice vacations that you took together. I saw some pictures of here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, we did. We did a lot of camping when the kids was little, and I loved camping. It's a lot of work, but the kids loved it, so I loved it. Yeah. And then, but when Matt came along, we quit camping, and he always says, we quit all the fun stuff. That when the rest of the kids was little, we had like chickens and a pony and goats, all kinds of stuff. And then when Matt came along, we didn't have any of that. But him alone was enough to take care of where I didn't have time. Yeah. We didn't have time to. But and then we have taken some nice trips, with the kids to different places, but I still like camping.
What were some of the lessons that you were trying to teach to these 4 young people?
Oh my, well, I was 19, so I felt like I was a child raising children, and they would ask me a question, and I would think, how do you expect me to know? I'm just a child. But then, as the kids grew and stuff, I think I just kind of followed my parents' ways and just taught them right from wrong. And you know, I just tried to keep them in line, and just, they were good kids, very good kids. And I'm very proud of them. I am. I think I did a real good job.
You did an excellent.
Tim, how about you?
Well, you know, like she said, when we first started out, we had nothing to go on. I remember some of the regrets, not knowing how to raise kids. The girls, I remember when we had a pear tree out in our backyard, and well, I remember spanking the kids, the girls. This is before Jim was born, because I told them to go pick up the rotten pears out of the yard, so I wouldn't have to mow them up. And they would playing around, and they wouldn't do it, so I went out and spanked them.
I spent them all
Applied
the time.
psychology very low.
Well, that's kind of a little thing, but I regret that.
Uh-huh.
Never even talked about it before, but
I spanked them all the time. And I really
You don't?
agree.
um,
I have no regrets.
but I didn't do.
Remember being spanked?
Only one, my dad, in church.
Oh, well, you deserved that. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why that.
No, you're not sorry. She was misbehaving.
I don't know why that seems so. I guess because I've never talked about it before. But you know, I was young. You don't know how to raise kids. You know, you talk about regrets. Well, you do the best you can, and that's all you can do. So, but most of the things we tried to get the kids interested in, you know, outdoors. We had chickens, like she said. We had goats, had a pony. We bought this place, you know, buying land. This was probably a big life changer. Back in '73, we bought this property here. And it's always been more than just property. It's like a child, you know. It's hard to imagine. It's almost a spiritual thing with the land. I can't even explain it, but it's not like, you know, some people can move around from house to house and think, but this is more than that. It's a life, and
home.
yeah, it's home. And we've been here. You know, we built the house in '75, and we've tried to, you know, make this really a great place to live, and I think it has been for all of us. So, I don't even know where I'm going with that. So,
Yeah. Well, you know, that's why we thought it would be nice to have the house over your shoulder too, as we're talking about it, because I know when we moved out of a house where we brought up our kids, we got the last thing out of the master bedroom, and we stood there and cried.
Yeah.
Said,
yeah.
This is where we brought up the kids, and we're moving out of here. We just can't
Right.
believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should tell them about calling mom from the bank and saying, you want this?
Yeah, maybe I should. Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, we found this property. We lived in town, and we found this property, and we talked about it. And I said, well, I'll just go down to the bank and see if we can even get a loan.
We
Just
came
to
out here.
do it.
We came out.
We came out and
here.
looked at it around.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the day that
Oh,
I called from the bank, went down to Permanent Federal and talked to Jim Helfrey,
Mhm.
you know, see if I could get a loan to buy this place. It was $26,000, I believe, for 23 acres. And we talked for a while, and he said, well, yeah, we can work this out. We'll give you a loan for it. So he said, do you want to call your wife to make sure that she's, you know, still okay with it, just to make sure? I said, sure, I'll call her. So I got on the phone, called her, and I said, well, Susie, they say we can get the money. You want to go through with it? And she said, no, and then hung up. And I put the phone down. I said, yeah. She said, okay. And then that wasn't very nice of me, was it? But that was a good decision, I think. You know, in the long run, it turned out really well. But it was just kind of, like I said, almost a spiritual draw to this place. And oh, it's been that way ever since.
What would you say, Susie, has affected you, your family, the most?
Faith. I would think faith is the biggest thing. It's very important, and I find as I get older that it's more important. So, and I love to see it in my kids, and I think my husband is the one that planted faith in me. It's very important.
Like she said, our faith in Christ has made a big difference. And I think, you know, I got that mostly for myself from my parents. You know, like I said, well, the Ursuline nuns, we lived in the backyard of the church in Earlington, so they kind of beat it into you a little bit. I'm not talking bad about the Ursuline nuns, but that's the way it was back then. You know, you followed their rules and did what they, if you stepped out of line, you were in trouble. But it was all good. But I think we had a big turn back in 78. There was a coal miners' strike, and I wasn't working much. And a friend of mine asked me to make a cursillo. It's a short course in Christianity out of the Sarto Retreat House, and I did that, and it seemed like that really set me on fire for the Christian values and how to maybe evangelize. Of course, you know, evangelize in your own area. They say bloom where you're planted, and then Susie did that too. And for I don't know, the next 15 years after that, we were very involved and supportive and worked hard to profess the Christian faith. And I think, you know, that was the growing years for the kids, and I believe they saw that. Although I think it was all good for them. I believe that's where it came from, and it has lasted. So it was very important, and still is very important.
So over time, have you have you formed a philosophy of life? Those things you really deeply believe in?
Well, I deeply believe that in honesty, and I believe in you know, being with those, helping those who can't help themselves. You know, I've never had any kind of prejudice, even as a child. You know, with this, you know, you talk about, you know, in Kentucky we had lots of black families, and I never had any kind of prejudice at all. I've never experienced that. I sometimes wonder how people in today's society still express that. It just doesn't. I don't understand that. So, you know, I believe that we all are, you know, created equal, not equally in intelligence all the time, and we can't all do the same things, but we are equal in God's eyes, and we should treat each other that way. So.
Just to do right, to treat people with kindness. I see that more and more, to be kind to people, and try not to worry so much. I'm a big worrier. And take just a day at a time, and try not to worry about what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. You know, as our faith deepens, we start thinking about, okay, what's the next step after this world? Who would like to go first? Susie, what do you think happens after we've served our time in this part of our life?
I really don't have the fear. I feel like, you know, it's going to be fine, and we will pass on, and hey, heaven sounds pretty good to me. And well, I don't have the fear now. Maybe when I get a little worse, I may have fear in it. But really, I love God, and I just focus on Him.
We were talking about the hereafter. What do I expect? That's kind of a difficult question, because what I have thought in the past as a young child, I feel different. It was always black and white. You do this, you go to hell. You do this, you don't. And I don't really feel that that's the case. I think some things could lead to a worse situation that may go that way. But even heaven or hell, I don't believe it's going to be anything like what I've always thought it may be. I think that I believe there'll be a superior being, and I believe that that all life will be involved. I'm talking about all life. We even hear the birds. I think they're going to be part of our life after death. Not just the human element. But now that's just my feelings. I used to be scared. I have no fear of death. I'm kind of, it's kind of like if you've never been on a big airplane, you have a little fear of getting there. But it'll be exciting, I hope. But nobody's ever come back and told us about it. So anyway, it's I don't want to say anything that will affect anybody else's faith, because faith can be fragile, and I feel really comfortable in how I feel, and I'm thankful for that.
You feel that you have a family legacy that you're leaving for the future generations, thinking in terms of grandkids?
Well, I tried to figure out what legacy really meant. And you have, what legacy, I had to go back, what legacy did my grandmother leave? And hers was kindness, I remember. On my dad's side, the mom was that way. Dad was hard work. Her parents, hard work. That would be, I guess, the legacy that we're looking at. My legacy would, I would hope that I would leave the legacy of honesty and love of nature. Like I said, I work with the Scouts quite a bit, and that's what I enjoy about it is nature and water, just everything that has to do with scouting. And I don't know. I just kind of torn between what the legacy really means. Just like they'll look back and see me as an honest man, a hardworking man, and one that would leave the impression or the know that they can do anything that they put their mind to, that there's no restrictions if you get in there and work on it.
Kids was just my life. Our kids that was my legacy right there, is my kids. And what I left behind was good times, but probably being strict and, I feel like, I wished I could say kindness, but I don't see that.
Do you want to,
I also struggle with legacy. I don't know.
A little bit on why you gave so much of your time and effort to scouting.
I was looking at some of these notes, and I did mention scouting. I've always loved that. One reason is I just enjoy seeing young boys, turn into men, and it really happens. You have the Scout Oath and Law, which trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. They're all wonderful ways to lead boys in a certain direction, and to do a good turn daily, and all, love of God, love of country. That's all part of scouting, and it's just really a wonderful way, and to make it fun for them too. Most of them just enjoy it, and they know that that's part of it. I've taken several of them on like caving trips, but Matt and I, when Matt was young, a young scout, troop hadn't done caving for a while, so I arranged for a caving trip, and I hadn't done any hardly, and we started in this little hole and got in at about 10 foot, and I panicked. Matt was right behind me, and I said, I got to get out of here. And even the senior patrol leader was there. He said, well, you can't leave. You're the scoutmaster. And I said, I can't too. I'm out of here. But anyway, we got out, reworked our thoughts, and went back through. And then since that time, I've taken hundreds of boys through different caves. But even though it was hard to start with, it worked out well. You just got to persevere, and it was a good teaching lesson for me, as well as I can tell the scouts that too, and they know that it's not always easy, but you can persevere and get through it. Mm-hmm. So I've worked with summer camp quite a bit. I've always been the swimming instructor for the past 30 years, and that has really been rewarding. It's a little difficult because there are dangers involved. You have to really prepare for it. But had 2 classes in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and you kind of use the peer pressure to make the boys do things, not make them do things they can't do, but to encourage them to do the things they can. I know one kid came up to me, one young man, after the end of the summer camp, and he said, last week I couldn't swim across Burdette Park swimming pool. And he said, and today I swam a mile. So, not many of them come back and make comments like that, but when it does, that one comment made it all worthwhile, because of that. So that's, it's just been very rewarding in that aspect. Every other year there's a big trip. You have summer camp one year, then either New York, then summer camp, and then DC, and then summer camp, and then we went out west. Probably the mission trips were probably the Haiti trips. Do you think? In the pictures that you had, we've been to Haiti. That wasn't with scouting. That was with the St. Joe Church group.
Mm-hmm. I think the pictures that you tell us on were Honduras.
That's true. That was a scouting trip.
Okay.
And what I started working with the older boys too, and we tried to do exciting things for them. We started scuba diving, and that went over real well. We had I don't even know how many boys. I know there were 24 of us went to Honduras, Riordan, and went scuba diving there. We've done several other scuba diving trips too. So that was all through scouting too. It's through the venturing crew, which is older boys that over 18 are, most of them. You have to drop out of scouts at 18, but you can stay in the venturing crew till you're 21.
Okay. So. And Susie, apparently, I know that anytime you have a scoutmaster in the family, that the wife is going to be involved to an extent. What are some of your thoughts about that?
Well, scouting was a great love for Tim, and I did see how much he loved it. I didn't love it all that much at times. But then our kids was in it, our sons, and kind of left our daughters out, which I regret. But and then some of our grandsons was in it, and so I just kind of try to keep the home fires burning while he was out with scouts, and he's been in it a long time, and he's made some great friendships with the kids and strong friendships with the kids and the adults, and we have taken, you know, trips with the other scouts too, with just the adults, and fun trips, and so but I think that's just one of his main loves in life is scouts.
What are you most grateful for?
My family, my faith, my health, all I can think.
Tim?
Can I go over some of my little notes here?
Absolutely.
Got to put these on.
Cheat sheets are good.
You know, it's something that I've missed. This goes back when Susie and I, probably after our first date, I went out to her house and couldn't find her, and I looked down. They had a garden down there behind their house, and so I drove my car. I had a '59 Plymouth. So I drove. Did I drive the Chevy down there? Okay, '52 Chevy. I drove it down this path to where she was. It was a garden on both sides. Well, her dad, that path was not meant for automobiles, and I drove down there to talk to her, and I got stuck up in one of the lands, you know, where he had plowed. And you know, I didn't think anything. It wasn't a big deal to me. At 19, nothing bothered me, but. She was worried because she knew her dad would be very upset. He didn't like me anyway, and if I tore up his garden with my car, it would make things worse. And me and my buddy were trying to figure out how to get the car out, and I looked around. Susie was gone, and next thing you know, I hear this noise and this tractor coming down the path. And she's on the tractor barefooted. She swings the tractor around, backs it up to the car, gets off, puts a chain around the bumper, and drags me out. And I think, I'm going to marry that girl. that was really very impressive.
Moment of truth right there.
Yeah. So I thought that I should mention that. You know, I had another thing. You know, of course, haven't said much about the railroad, but you know, when we first married, I was working a passenger train. And, you know, that's been a long time ago, but I used to take her on trips. When I worked a passenger train, I would take her on trips to Nashville. It was really a nice job. The Pullman conductor, he would always, they were always a bunch of old guys. You know, when here I bring a 19-year-old girl on the train, they would always take us back to the rear coach, and there was a Pullman car back there that had a roomette, and you know, they would fix us up with a roomette, and they'd just laugh. You know how dirty old men are. They said, "Okay, you can stay here, but don't mess the bed up." You know, so that was, of course, I understand now how dirty old men are now. But
Finally arrived, huh?
Right. Yeah. A little bit about the railroad. You know, I being an engineer was an exciting job. Always exciting. I didn't like the conditions weren't good because you never knew when you were going to work. But as far as being in control of maybe a 2-mile long train, 10,000 tons of coal or whatever, it was good. And one thing I trained a lot of new engineers over time, and one thing I always told them, you know, they were always worried about if an accident happens, if you hit an automobile or something, and they wanted to know how you handle that. And I always told them that, well, you know, if you're always doing what's right, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and something happens and someone dies, you know, you'll feel bad about it, but you won't feel guilty. And I've always lived, my whole career was that. I always wanted to do what was right, and I did have 2 fatalities in 42 years, and you know, that's too many, but it's not. I was always doing what I should be doing, and there was no guilt. It was sadness, but no guilt. So that was another thing I hope that would be part of a legacy to my fellow workers. You know, so and You know, when we were talking about camping, Susie was talking about the kids always, you know, living their faith, and I think that might be part of our legacy to them. When we were camping, if we were on a weekend, we always made sure that we attended church. We never missed mass, regardless of where we were. You know, we just never did. And I think now, you know, they all attend mass regularly. They're strong in their faith, and I think maybe that might have been part of our legacy to them is with their faith, honesty, love one another, and forgive, and also accept forgiveness. So I think those would be good points that I hope would be a good legacy to leave for them.
We got married, you know, I wasn't Catholic, and him being Catholic, he would go to church every Sunday, and I thought, you know, when we were kids, or when we lived at home, you went to church at your convenience, and we went to St. Paul's, and, you know, if you missed a Sunday, that was just no big deal. And then when I got married and saw that you have to go to church every Sunday, I thought, there is no way that I could go to church every Sunday. I just didn't see myself being able to do that. So I wasn't going to turn Catholic because I just couldn't take that on. And but he never said anything to me about that. He would just go to church, come home, and thank God, every Sunday. And finally, after I had Karen, I started thinking that, you know, I should probably get my act together and turn Catholic. And of course, I didn't tell my parents, but I started in with turning Catholic and went to sessions all the time. And once I turned Catholic, that was it. I mean, I don't think I've ever, you know, I'm so glad I did. That was a good thing.
Sacrament kind of grows on you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Favorite song?
Well, I guess it was Blue Velvet would be a song that we.
I have many. He doesn't.
That was our dating song, and
Yeah.
you know, when we were young.
I love that song.
You know, one of the songs that we like. You know, we were both coordinators for the Cursillo, and we had songs. You know, theme songs. Mine was "How Great Thou Art." I still hold that close, and hers was "Holy Ground." They're both beautiful songs. So. Maybe they'll be played at our funerals.
I hope.
Yeah, so.
You can continue to enjoy them in the meantime.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Susie, other favorite songs?
Oh, that's it. I mean, Blue Velvet, definitely. And, I have I love lots of songs. Like, I Can Only Imagine. That's a really good song. I don't know. Like, maybe at my funeral, if they can play Wake Up Little Susie, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Has to be with that name.